Welcome to my weekly review. Today is Saturday, October 11th. It's early Saturday morning. I'm just working on my first cup of coffee. You're looking at a daily chart of the Nasdaq, which took a hit on Friday of 820 points or 3.56%, closed at 22,204. And you could see the average daily volume was 28% above the 50-day average volume. Just want to point out a couple of things here that I think are important. And one is if you look at this rally here, how tight the trading has been the entire time, and then you get this one big bar, which is, that's a big bar, right? On Friday. And you can see the tight trading all the way up. All these little daily ranges are tight, and then you get this wide range. So that would be an abnormal candle. And the last time we saw something like this was, hey, way back here, right? This is t tariff on and then tariff off, right? We've seen the Nasdaq though a couple times here during this rally recently, undercut the 21 here and just rallied right back. Now this one undercut the 21 on Friday, closed with that inverted hammer candle, and it looks ominous, right? Like it wants to go further down, maybe to the 50, maybe beyond the 50, but. This is a news-driven market. So if you didn't know the news and you just looked at this chart and you'd say, wow, that looks like a reversal candle. But, we do know the news and we do know that, the news can change by Monday morning and this thing could do something like it did back in April, when we got liberated, right? This looks pretty harrowing, right? And then, oh, we get liberated and it's off to the races. So, you got to stay open-minded. You got to stay flexible. I'm going to yellow because I have to have guardrails and rules. And so a little more caution here, reduce some stuff, including Robinhood, which I don't know. I guess they didn't let some people out yesterday. Some people are mad at Robinhood. So I'm going to be watching that stock on Monday. Uh, but yeah, I have to have some guardrails. And below the 21, I'm more cautious. Above, I'm more aggressive. I just keep it simple. And that's protected me from losing a lot of capital like I used to back in the day in the 80s and 90s. When you just keep hanging on and thinking things are going to keep going up. Well, maybe not. So, we're going into earnings season. We're in that point where the Fed is quiet. There's no earnings, and so there's a little, I guess you could say, manipulation going on in the market. So you just have to play the hand that we're dealt and not the one that we want, right? This is the market we have, and you have to play the market that you have and not the one that you want. So, yeah, well, I'm going to go to the weekly chart here on the Nasdaq, and you can see that weekly it was down 575 points, 2.53%, and the volume was up last week, 23% above the weekly average volume. And you can see the pullback here. That's the 4-week line, the green line there, the 20-day essentially. And yeah, so it's time to be a little cautious because you can see these tight trading weeks, and now we have this big bar here, and we have to deal with this one way or another. My way is just reducing some of the stuff that I'm not ever leveraged. You guys know that, 85% is fully invested for me. I don't do leverage anymore. And I think the people got really hammered in the cryptocurrency on being leveraged. From what I'm reading, it was not pretty. And there's a lot of liquidity in this market, and we're probably going to see a rotation prior to earnings. And I'm going to get to a couple of earnings at the end of the show. But anyway, I want to get to the news from last week. AMD started it off with their partnership with OpenAI. And you think, wow, man, AMD got hammered on Friday, but all it did was pull back to its 5 EMA, which is fine. It had a big move and it pulled back, yes, almost 8%. So you think, man, 8%, it got hammered. But for the week, it was up, more than 30%. So that's a nice breakout for AMD. And yeah, there's going to be some profit taking, of course. They have earnings coming up too. So you get a big move like that, you're going to get some profits taken. You can see the blue dot here indicating relative strength. And Sanmina, they bought the data center business, was a ZT back in May for like 3 billion. Very smart move by Yuri. Big move up to like 160, then pull back, closed at 120, but still a nice breakout from this base, just like AMD, and it's got the blue dot here, showing relative strength. So congrats to the Solar brothers. I think they're very happy with the week. I should point out, even though it pulled back a lot, it was up 7.5% last week. So that's a big move for Sanmina. All right. And then we had some M&A in the biotech drug space. GenMab made a purchase. The purchase was usually when you acquire a company, you get hit a little bit, a couple percent. And they bought MRUS is the ticker symbol, Maris, and Maris flatlined for the week as it was taken out. And then Novo Nordisk made a purchase last week. This thing, wow, this just can't. I don't think this thing's going to move until it has earnings, and I think this will be a bottom here because earnings are going to be better. They sandbagged the quarter, but they bought AKRO, so a fatty liver mash company, and you could see the last 2 days of trading here just. I think it was like five something billion. Yeah, and right now it's 4.3, $5.2 billion deal. So yeah, that was in the news last week. And usually when you see that type of M&A in the drug space, you see some pen action in some other speculative names. And we saw that this week, and I'll get to it in a minute, but I can't go any further without talking about NVIDIA in the news as always. Nice pullback here on Friday down to the 21. It looked like it was breaking out of this base, pushing away, and then nearly a 5% loss on Friday, brought it back to its, pivot point. I think NVIDIA is going to be fine, the leader of the AI revolution. But yeah, still near that pivot point. It was looking like a breakout, then all of a sudden, the president tweets are more powerful than any technical analysis. There's a little meme going around. Arm's looking good to me right here. Setting up in a base, needs to form a handle, and had a nice shakeout on Friday. Maybe a little continuation here around that 150 area. But yeah, ARM is setting up in a base here and looks pretty darn good. This is a weekly review, so I got to show a weekly chart here. Still up last week, despite the loss on Friday. Got up to that pivot point and just got rejected. So that will be an area of interest for ARM holdings, that 166 area. And now also we had, NVTS. This one looks good as well. I know it's a lower price stock, smaller, under 2 billion market cap stock, but setting up in a base here and looks pretty good to me. Probably needs a little bit of a shakeout as it's straight up from the lows, and it was up more than 5% last week. So just pointing out some of these semiconductors that are, showing well right now. A-Lab was down 8.5% on Friday. There's some big moves on Friday. It really spooks people. But still consolidating within a base. It pulled back to its 50 and then bounced, still up nearly 3% last week despite the Friday massacre. Uh, CRDO, Credo, another one that had been up a lot. I've got to go to and it's still above the 50 here. Got to go to the weekly though, because it had like a few weeks in a row where it was up, you know, 8% and then 15%, 15%. But those are big moves, right? And then it kind of tops out at 176 and pulls back. You can see here to its 10-week line. Credo looks fine to me. I know it got hammered, down 8% on Friday, like everything else, join the club. It was pretty hard to avoid any type of a damage here on Friday. I have a story to tell. I'll tell it later when I get there about Friday's action. Rambus sliced the 21 here, so that doesn't look as good. Like I said, below the 21, I'm not too thrilled about a stock. Above it, I'm more aggressive. So Rambus, Marvell took a hit too on Friday. This one still looks good though. If we go to the weekly chart, consolidating in this base, you're trying to break out and then whoop, pull back. Yeah, just flat on the week. So, that's kind of avoided some of that damage. Yeah, it was down 5% on Friday, but flat for the week. So if you're holding the stock, flat is good. All right, I'm going to get off the semiconductors and go to the software names. The software security, cybersecurity names. This is CrowdStrike setting up in a base here. They don't report until December 2nd, but you can see this nice pattern here. Cup with handle. Yeah, it was down 3% on Friday, like everything else. Just flat on the week, though, and that's what you want to see. Just a ferreting out here. Buyers and sellers, right? Buyers and sellers, yeah, support and resistance. It's finding support at the 21, a little bit of resistance above that 507.20, so it needs to work that out. But CrowdStrike looks good to me. Zscaler, it came up straight from the lows, right? It went straight from 260 up to 300. Now it probably needs 4, 5, 6 days to form a handle here, pull back maybe to the 21, but that one's looking much better. And then Palo Alto Networks, yeah, I was trying to break out of this base here and pull back on Friday, still above the 21. I know it was down 3% on Friday, but flat for the week, so that's fine. Flat is fine. We just saw the Nasdaq was down big for the week, so if you're flat, then you're outperforming the index. And then, TLS is one. This is one I had on my gap and go list, right? It gapped up on earnings and it's been surfing the five. Then all of a sudden, whoop, undercut the 21 on Friday and closed at 666. There's no way I'm holding a stock trading at 666. That's it. The devil's in the details. Yeah, that's a ominous close. All right, I'm going to move on because I got to get to some of the leading industry groups. I can't go too long without talking about gold. The top performing group, energy and alternative energy, and the gold stocks, DRD. This one's just surfing its five. Even though the market pulled back on Friday, this thing was up nearly 3%. Incredible strength on this one. I know it's rated 11th, but it's a top performing group, up 100% this year, along with the alternative energy group. And we take a look at the weekly chart, and you can see a 3 weeks tight pattern with the high of 30.43 and it closed at 28. So we'll see how this resolves here. Maybe a little bit of a pullback and then go. I think gold's still going higher. Not only the commodity, but these gold stocks, I believe, are going higher. GFI is another one that I like in this group. Yeah, I was down 2.7%, nearly 3% last week. Pulled back to the 21 and found support there on Friday, up 2.5%, while everything else was like cratering. So that one looks pretty good. AU had a rough day on Thursday and Friday here, but still one of the leading stocks in this group. Yeah, down 2% last week. Every runner needs a little bit of a rest. And Anglo Gold Ashanti has been running a lot. Another one, and this is a copper play, IE. I just like the setup here. Really had a lot of selling, sold off, and then built the right side of the base. And last week had its highest volume, ever, and it moved up nearly 16% last week. Copper now is trading above $5. So watching the price of the commodity there, and you had that 1325, high on September 25th, and it formed this base and it ripped right through that 1325, pulled back on Friday, 3.5%, maybe to pull back to the five here, but it closed 3.5% above its 5 EMA. So that's a super strong stock. Yeah, I like Ivanhoe and then SSRM. This is a leading stock in the gold group. And yeah, just pull back a little bit. Once they run that much, all runners need their rest. And the last one I want to show is another copper stock, Southern Copper. This is a $100 billion company. Pulled back on Friday, like everything else, 4%. But you can see how this one has been running and down 2.5% for the week. Broke out of this stage one base here, and it's really been ripping hard. So trading along with the price of copper, understandably. All right, the top performing group, they're both up 100%. Gold and alternative energy. Bloom had this big run. This is flagging now, maybe giving us a chance, another chance to get in. But this thing ran from, $20 or below $20, and then flagged here for a little bit, and then it ran back up, and now it's flagging again. So I like it above that weekly high. low of 95.70 from last week. So it has some work to do. It's just, run so much. You can see this on the weekly, just a relentless pursuit of $100 for Bloom Energy. Oklo, though, is the big winner in this group, up nearly 600% this year alone, and up over 1,000% in the last year. Up 6.5% on Friday when everything else was just crashing and burning. It was up a lot. If I go to a 5 minute chart here, yeah, this thing looked like it was really going to ramp. And then the tweets come in or the True Social posts and everything sells off. But still a strong day. And it was up, 15.5% for the week. Yeah, still, I think it wants higher prices. I know it's pre-revenue. I know the whole deal, but this thing wants higher prices and probably going to get them before too long. And then LEU, another leader in this group. Yeah, pull back 2% on Friday. That one was making a strong move as well, up, 6% for the week. If I go to the 5 minute chart, you can see, excuse me, the fucking allergies are killing me here in Arizona. They're cutting the grass while I golf. How dare them? Uh, this one, yeah, it looked like it was going to really ramp and then sold off like everything else on Friday. And when the market's cratering like this, it's just best to get out and let the dust settle. That's what happened here with LEU. Probably, pull back to the 5 and resume its uptrend. Yeah, it closed just a tick above its 5. So pretty healthy stock if you're trading above your 5. And a lot of stocks are. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I can't go much further without mentioning these rare earth stocks, the mineral names. Yeah, top 5 group. Government involvement is not helping this. Excuse me, it is helping this. Man, I'm losing my voice. Breakout, move higher, made a high. Let's take a look at this action on Friday. Yeah, same thing. As soon as that True Social post came out, just everything sold off. Still up 5% on the day. MP is another one trying to break out of a base here. 82.23 would be your trigger. Close at 78, but up, 8% on the day and nearly 10% last week. You can see this consolidation pattern here, cup with handle. Stage 3 or later stage type of base here. But still, I believe it goes higher. And this thing's kind of moving on news too. These are all moving on news, and we cannot control the news. So, holding them is tough because they have these, you get bad news and it pulls back. You get good news and it rips higher. This is UUUU. This one made a new high on Friday. Super strong name, up 23% last week. Thank you very much. That always looks good in the portfolio, a 23% weekly move. METC, which I thought was a coal stock. I stand corrected. And this thing's trading with the minerals. You can see that, man, it's incredible strength, up 25% last week. I think I mention this every day. Can you buy it here? Pretty tough, but I think it wants higher prices. And then CRML, government making overtures towards this one. They kind of rejected them. The stock pulled back. It was still up 45% on that day that they rejected them. Had an inside day and then pop, pop, pop every day. So last week's gain was a cool 88%. Not bad for critical metals. And the last group I'm going to cover is drugs. Drugs, little impervious to this tariff talk here. MLYS up 7% last week, 10% move. Nice, not bad. This flag patterns, they have been working. I don't know if the dynamics are going to change in the market here due to that, tariff tweet, but nice breakout from that flag pattern for MLYS. That looks pretty darn good. Well, PTGX, I guess Johnson and Johnson are making overtures towards this company. The talk chatter that they're going to be bought out. It was up 30% on Friday. Nice move for Protagonist Therapeutics, up 34% for the week. We'll see if anything develops over the weekend with Johnson and Johnson and PTGX. ABVX, love this chart pattern right here. Made this big gap higher, gap and go, which is what we look for, right? We don't want a gap and crap. We want a gap and go. Made that high of 92.91 on September 5th. It's been basing for about 5 weeks here and now breaks out Friday. The high was 97. So ABVX, definitely one to watch here as it approaches that par level. BBIO, Bridge Bio, another strong name, making new highs on Friday. Take a look at the weekly chart. Yeah, lower left, upper right. You got to like that. Other names here. Oh, stoked. You got to be stoked about Stoke Therapeutics. Man, look at the move on this thing. Holy moly. April 11th, yeah, it was yeah, $5 now at 30. Nice six bagger. Not bad. I know people don't like biotechs for good reason because it's outhouse or penthouse. Well, man, you get some really strong moves in some of these names, and it's very enticing. ZYME works. Weekly chart, cup shape pattern probably needs a week or two to form a little bit of a handle here, but that looks pretty darn good to me. A stage three base here, trading about $18. So anything above $18, I kind of like this one here. 1770 is the trigger. Yeah, so there's some good looking stuff in the drug areas. And anyway, I'm going to move on here. I want to get to some relative strength stocks. I got to say, on Friday, this is one of my larger holdings. I had some calls in this one and they were working. I had carried them over from Thursday into Friday morning. And so I sold half of them before I took my dog for a walk because I want to be present when I walk my dog because there's a lot of coyotes and javelinas and bobcats around. He'll chase them and it will end badly. So I turn off my phone. I just pay attention to the nature around me. But I sold half of them in the morning, and then I looked at my phone and go, man, this thing's cratering here. What time was this? Yeah, 11:30, which is 8:30 my time. Yeah, it was at 61. So this thing went from $70 to 61 in a pretty short period of time here. Yeah, from 10 to what I say 11:30, an hour and a half. So I looked at that, and so I had to say, I got to get rid of these things and get out. So I let a profit turn into a loss on some of this stuff, but pretty much got away unscathed on Friday due to the calls in IREN. And same thing with CIFR, carried over from Thursday into Friday. It looked pretty darn good. It hit 2020 on Friday morning. Same thing. I'd sold half my calls before I took my dog for a walk. And then I looked at the phone and said, man, there's something happened. The tweet from the president, it just kind of destroyed wealth here. So I had to get out. You have to be quick to action when you see something like that because that's game-changing stuff right there. When you go from 2020 to what did it close at 1697, that's a big move to the downside. So got to protect your assets. Wolf, kind of the same thing, but they're still strong. I got to point out these things, even though they pull back 5% above the 21. The other Wolf, 3.8% above the 21. So there's, excuse me, above the five. This green line's a five. So any stock above the five, I expect them to pull back to the five, find support and bounce, but we'll see. You got to take it one day at a time. That one was down 12%, and it's still, nearly 4% above its 5 EMA. Some other stocks, APLD reported earnings on Thursday. It was pretty flat after hours. I thought that's kind of strange. Took a swipe at it, and then it ran up hard, $39. And then closed like everything else, right? Like everything else. Rallied up. You get the tweet, and then adios muchachos, right? A lot of pain there involved with one Truth Social post. Let me see. ASTS had a huge week. Yeah, pull back a little bit on Friday, but they had news, a 21% move, very nice. For that one, Rocket Lab, they announced news. It was up 14% for the week, but on Friday, yeah, it had a big move up and then pull back, just like everything else, pretty much, except for the gold stocks and some other financial related names and staples, conservative plays, defense names. There you go. There's your big rally in the morning, and then it's 73.50 and it closed at 64. That really, for lack of a better term, really sucks. It does. A couple other names here. I'm going to go through BE, Bloom Energy. Yeah, this one just nice relative strength name. Showed that one earlier. Peabody Energy, high tide flag here. Undercut the 5 on Friday, barely. I'm going to watch this one next week, but this is one of the top performing stocks. This is on my relative strength list. This is a CNN, another one of these gap and go plays. So earnings, I'm going to do a video on earnings this weekend and the top 10 stocks of gap and go because stocks that gap on earnings, one time, they're likely to do it again because they're beating and raising. There's something going on here where they're able to beat and raise guidance and the stock gaps up and trends with the 5 that's surfing the 5 like Kelly Slater, seeing a very strong stock. HUT, one that I don't talk about very much, big strong move here. There's your flag pattern, 18 to 39, flag down to the 21 there at $32 and then popped. Yeah, it was down 6% on Friday, but up yeah, for the week nicely. Another name, IONQ. I'm very skeptical of these names. I think this is the area of the market. This is down 3.5% last week. This is an area of the market where I'm watching for. I think these will be the first to crack. They're up so much. There's not not much sales here. You got a 20 billion market cap with what, less than 50 million in sales. So they're strong though, Rigetti and IONQ. Yeah, I'm watching these very closely. QBTS. These are all on the relative strength list. This one's flagging here. Maybe they'll have another run, but I'm definitely watching these for a crack. What else we have? The drones, the flying machines, another theme. You got AI, you got crypto, and you got the flying machines. A couple of things, robotic, themes that are working in the market. This one definitely working. Uh, Flagging now after a huge move. Yeah, this thing just broke out and has not looked back. Down slightly last week, but KTOS, a thing of beauty. NBIS, another one of these data center plays. Yeah, it was up last week while the Nasdaq was down. Very strong name. Gap tire on a deal news, and then has been surfing the 5 ever since. The NTLA, this is one that I should have shown in the medical biotech group, but yeah, another strong move here, broke out of a base, just relative strength up 23% last week. Thank you very much. And the last one is SanDisk. Yeah, SanDisk pulled back last week 9%, but you could see it's been on a major run. It looks like it might be pulling, a high tide flag pattern here. Yeah, that looks good to me. The only problem is it undercut the 5. I like to see these strong stocks, hold their 5, but maybe it'll pull back to the 21. Who knows? But I wouldn't give up on a stock that moves like that. It's a spinoff from Western Digital. Very strong name. All right. I'm not going to go through my trades today. I'm going to stop right there. I did say that I'm going to create a video this weekend with some stocks that gapped up and moved higher. Surfing the 5, Glowworm is certainly one. Laser, even though these things pulled back on Friday, they gapped higher in earnings and have been ripping. So Fix is another one. Yeah, gapped up on earnings, and they're going to be reporting here. The 22nd's not far away. Today's the 11th, so we'll call it 11 days. Even I can do that math, even though I run out of fingers. Yeah, that one gapped up by 22% on earnings. So, yeah, I'm going to include a video of these that have been really ripping hard after their earnings report. This one's done it a couple times. in May, in August, and so now they're going to report here in November. Definitely something to look forward to. These gaps higher and go, and surfing their moving averages to higher prices. All right, that's it for me. Thank you for watching at mcstockcharts.com. We never give up, except in the honor of the great Steve Jobs. I have one more thing, and that's I'm looking at these housing stocks for rate cuts. I thought it was a slam dunk that we're going to get rate cuts, but now I'm not so sure. I'm not an economist. I don't pretend to be. I don't know if we need them or not. It seems like the housing market was pricing in rate cuts, and now, these pullbacks are telling me that maybe they're not going to get them, and the housing market really needs them. The housing market and the auto industry are really hurting right now. And I listened to the CEO from KBH and CarMax, on consecutive days or a couple weeks ago, and they were both begging for rate cuts. I don't know if we're going to get them or not. If we are, I would think these stocks would be rallying hard, and they're selling off here. Pulte had this beautiful chart, and now it's starting to give it up, right? Could just be a shakeout before the move higher. I'm watching them, but man, it was down nearly 13% last week. And the inflation data ticked up. I don't want to go macro here because macro is boring. But yeah, inflation data has been ticking up. Jobs market is horrific. So the Fed is in a tough spot. That's all I got to say. I'm glad I'm not a Fed. I'm not a Fed member. I wouldn't know what to do right now. Build our first source. Yeah, this is another one that's in the housing group. Looked like it was going to form a base here and move higher in the last few weeks. Not so much. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're not going to get our rate cut. I don't know. We're going to find out more. In a couple of weeks they're going to be meeting. Yeah, MTH. So these housing stocks are just giving up the ghost here. That's about it for me. Thank you for watching. Hit mcstockcharts.com. We never give up. I'll be posting on Monday. We're going to yellow, a little more caution as the